front of me, but it added up pretty well to what the average use on an annual basis is for a single-family home. So there's no reason to change that. So then you would just do that math there. For 7,000 gallons, at this rate, you get a minimum charge of $39.05. So if you don't use 7,000 gallons, and this again is to cover those basic operational costs that don't go down, the staff, the insurance, the electricity, and all that. And I should have mentioned that under water too. So both of these are the same, they're just separated. Same thing with the debt. You've got a number, and the difference in units that are assigned are different customers for water and a slightly different number of customers in sewer, and different types. So you have a slightly different number of assigned units. So here's your debt line for sewer divided by the total number of units there, and that comes up with the cost per unit. Does anybody have to leave? No? Okay. So that comes up to the total cost per unit. For sewer is $24.24 a year for a single family home, times one unit, and then whatever the other types are, you just multiply it by the number of units they're assigned.
Can you just repeat that, please? Can you just repeat that? I missed that.
Which portion?
The part when you're talking about the build-in units with the non-residential, I guess it was.
Okay, so if we're saying that, and this is in your code already, you don't have to change anything, that a residence is given one unit.
Right.
And so we're gonna have them have one unit for water and one for sewer, so you can keep these charges separate. So basically you take your debt line, whatever you're looking at, water or sewer, and the total number of units that relate to that system. And the note there is that there is a different number of units for water than there are for sewer, because not everyone is connected to both water and sewer. There's some parcels or customers or commercials or residences that might have wells or might have a septic system. So there's slightly different number of assigned units currently. So you take your budget for debt or capital improvement for your facility charge, and you divide that by the total number of units, and that gives you the cost per unit. So residences are only one unit, so that's what they're paying. And you have a number of other commercials and restaurants and gas stations and whatever that are assigned a different number of units. And so they would be paying more than what's up here. This right here reflects a single family home.
Question about the actual water rate. I don't know if I missed it. Is there going to be a difference, or do you suggest a difference between a residential water rate and a commercial water rate?
At this point, it's not in your law, and since you're basing it on consumption, at this point I would say, you don't need to make all of that change right away. You can think about it. I've worked with other municipalities that have what I was calling buckets for consumption, and you can base those on things like what's the lowest 25% water use, then they get this rate, and then the higher. And then what that really should be doing is charging commercials or properties that are otherwise making a profit out of being able to use that water. Does get a little bit harder to use, but if you've got one of those, and I believe you do here, have one of those companies that runs the software.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they usually have a way to build in the math. I've also worked for other smaller municipalities where the clerk and the billing staff sit there and calculate everybody's, and they might have 25. In your case, I don't recommend doing the math by hand.
Thank you.
But yeah.
Now, I have a question. As this village ages, everybody's getting older, families are growing, kids move out. I'm a single guy. I have a house here. I'm paying for 7,000 gallons of water. Okay, there's no fair, easy way. I'm paying whatever it is for sewer. But if I water my garden, or use the water on my lawn, or top off my pool, it's not going into the sewer, yet I'm still paying for it. On top of, if I'm billed for 7,000 gallons, and maybe I only use 4,000. And then the next billing cycle, I'm getting paid again, but they're going off my meter reading. I feel like I'm paying double for the same water that I never even used.
For flushing or something like that, if you're
Whatever.
using it for your garden.
If I get billed for 7,000 gallons, and I only used, say, 4,000, Or another hypothetical situation, I did use 7,000, but they estimated the reading and said I only used 4,000. Now when they come and actually take a reading the next time,
It's higher.
it's gonna be higher,
And
and I'm
that'll-
paying
that'll
for the
even
same
out on your
water
quarterly.
twice that I
Yeah.
never used
Yeah, no, that
to
would,
begin with.
that situation, because you're being billed quarterly for consumption, that evens out. But basically, think about it.
Not really, if I'm getting billed 7,000 every quarter and I only use 4,000 every quarter, and then one quarter they don't read the meter, and the next quarter they read it, and now it's
And now you're
summertime and I filled my pool, so I used more,
Yeah,
and then I'm getting billed for the same water that I never used twice.
right. Cost per $1,000, for 1,000 gallons is
And then the sewer on top of that I
$3.
didn't use, you know, it's just kind of,
$3.77 per
I mean, I don't know
1,000
how,
It's a
something could
question
be,
that's always asked. Actually,
Right.
I asked this question 32 years
you
ago.
know, not only do we take it on the head paying the school
Right.
taxes when our kids are grown and we've done our
But
time.
that's another story.
Yeah,
but,
You get
you
into
know,
that.
It's also same
But
for
then I
your
don't
car.
mind, we still need good schools, it's good for the community, you pay it. But then you're gonna take it on the head and pay for water twice that you never even used, this is,
This
Well,
right
follow
now
up, I'm sorry.
is about the same as gasoline for your car. And you pay for your car, you pay insurance, whether you're driving your car or not. It's a cost of having the ability to turn on your water tap.
true, but even if your car is parked and somebody hits it and takes off, now you have to
I'm
put
the
a
same
claim to your
I'm in the same
insurance.
boat as you
Right.
are, I'm in the same boat as you are, and I agree. And every year, I think about this, and then I start looking at my other bills. Orange and Rockland charges me $21 a month whether I use the
Oh, it's
electric or
3
not.
times the cost to bring it to the
Right,
house
so
for,
you pay $40 a month just on your gas and electric bill.
I use $30 worth of product, it cost me $75 to get it to the house, absurd, I lose my mind with that all the
Seems
time.
like it's,
Or the MTA surcharge they put on my bill, I don't even use the train, we got one train up here. But give me a break.
You don't go outside and see the trains going up and down.
No.
Some people do, yeah.
But this is, it's just, it's a
It's a
question
fact
that
of
is.
having a facility and how to get the revenue.
You know, and I don't mind paying the 7,000 gallons, but then I don't wanna pay for the same water twice that I never even used to begin with.
You're not actually paying for the same water twice. It's just a way
Well,
of
if they
charging for the
estimate a
service.
reading, and they say only use 4,000
Okay,
gallons, then
and
I
is
just
there
pay
Is
it.
there a method for disputing something that is, out of normal?
I mean, I always, I get the bill, I keep track of my thing, and then if they give me an estimated reading, I call up and I
That's
say,
probably one of the commonly asked questions about estimating the bills, okay? That, why are your bills estimated? That's the question that I have. So when I return phone calls to the resident, I want to know why your bill has been estimated 6 times.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get, well, because we have a dog that's out in the backyard. Okay, I'm not going to read the meter, there's a dog out in the backyard. So what we have them do right now is take a picture of their meter,
Okay,
their indoor meter, and send it to us. Okay, so we're not gonna, we did have someone who was bit by a dog.
yeah.
Okay, he's doing well.
The dog? The dog?
The dog is doing well. And, but that's one way of
Yeah,
really fixing the problem or help fix the problem,
right.
you know.
The other way around is as you update those meters, update them to radio read.
Well,
Or
that's
some
what
higher
we,
technology, but then you have to spend money on that too.
On that, it's an investment.
Mhm.
You know, and you have what Delaware Engineering has sent out grants for that.
Yes,
I don't know if
there are grants
We
available
didn't
for
get the
upgrade
first
and
time,
every
hopefully
year
we'll get
there
the
are a
second
little
one.
bit, yeah.
you know, so
and it's the
we are
same
working
thing
to, because everyone in this room,
with the gas and electric, it's the same thing, because they have winter rates and summer rates they raise it. And I complained to O&R about this too, because then they miraculously give you an estimated reading, lowball you, and then they change the rate to the summer rate, then they actually come and read it, and they're billing you for stuff that you actually used at the lower rate, because they gave you a low reading. To me, that's kind of unethical, but they do it, and they get away with it.
everyone here pays their water bill, okay? So we don't want to pay anyone.
I mean, it's a precious commodity, I mean, you know, but,
We don't have summer rates, we don't have that.
No, our rates are the same, it's just that consumption is higher in the summer months than they are in the winter months.
True, because people are filling their pools, watering their
Yes.
lawns.
And that goes back to your original question, why am I paying more for, I'm paying for water that's not going to the sewer? I don't know if there's an answer for
There's no way to separate that,
Okay.
really.
There would have to be a separate meter.
Separate
which is
meter.
Cost, cost to maintain.
okay, which would, of course, would be passed on to the consumer. It's just something that, I mean, I asked that question, like I said, 32 years ago. I'm filling my pool, I'm washing my car, I'm watering my lawn, it's not going into the sewer system. I'm not gonna tell you what I was told.
Oh, it evaporates, it comes back as rain, and it goes into the sewer system.
Well, it wasn't that quite, I wish I would have been told that. I was just told that's the way it is.
So I have a question. How often are the units updated? Because we constantly have a shift in, people making multifamilies. We have projects that are currently proposed right now where one piece of property, it's 2 units, they're looking to make 16 units on there.
Yeah, and those are things that need to be, just as a note, your budget needs to accurately reflect your costs. Your, debt rate is one thing, your operation and maintenance, and records need to be kept. Is this a residential area, property or a commercial? Is it one family
Well,
or is
that's
it
what I'm
two?
asking, how long, because obviously as more units come on, the debt now is shared amongst more units.
Right.
So how often is that process done of updating the numbers?
Well,
In the county, it's usually done on an annual basis as properties change. But that's something that your system, the village system for billing, has to be keeping up to date. And I have seen some counties do better at this than others in terms of what's actually on this property.
but currently, if I have a 2-family house with 1 meter, it's getting billed as 1 residential unit, but yet I'm making a profit off of rent,
Mhm.
or hopefully making a profit off of rent, and there's 2 families using the water. Isn't
So
that
how
a little
ethical are
unfair?
you as a landlord?
I'm not a landlord. I don't want to be a landlord, it's too many
That's
headaches.
where
Right.
the rent registry comes into play.
Because if
Okay,
it's,
so we know how many people are living in this home. We are growing, the village is growing. I don't think this was a problem.
30
10
years
years
ago when
ago-
they put this in, it wasn't a problem. That's why there's a difference. I know for the fact there are still houses in this village that have septic systems.
Yes.
I have a well in my basement. I don't use it, but I have a well there that during droughts I've tied into it because we
Just
have
don't use it for
restrictions.
drinking water.
What?
Just don't use it for drinking water.
No, and it's not. It was for watering gardens and
Yeah.
stuff because my property was built before the water system.
And this system is only as good as the data that supports it. So there needs to be an update on the information for these parcels. Everybody goes through that. It's maintaining what you know about what you have.
Well, and that was the question, how often is it going to be updated, that data?
The county usually updates that on an annual basis. If people buy a home, there's somebody, owner change, there's a remodel, there's the county data is usually kept up. And that
And
has
our
to
building
do with
department- our building
how the building
department-
We'll be
department
updating that data?
Yes.
corresponds, yeah.
How would you handle the schools? In the village, we have high school, middle school, elementary school.
Okay, do you want to shift to the next screen and we'll talk
Good.
about that? Recommendations.
Before you jump over there,
Sure.
can I ask for a definition of a unit?
In this case, it's a number 1, a unit, how much for the facility charge. And you're basically saying that a single-family home is 1. And then the benefit that you get for using water or sewer is a multiplier of 1. If you've got more than, if it's a multiple family unit, if it's a commercial unit, you get assigned, you're a 2, you've got 2, you've got 3, and that multiplies the charge per unit for facility charges. I mean, if you have 1 charge per unit, and if you're assigned more than 1 unit, you multiply that. So that's your debt service charge increases.
Okay, that's not where I'm going. I'm trying to understand what a unit is defined, how you define 1 unit. Like if you have a multifamily, or if you have a facility that starts out as a single family and then say they build onto it and create a multifamily. It's still the same sewer system, it still merges into the same everything.
Mhm.
but that's considered 2 units versus 1?
For the benefit, for debt and capital improvement, for making upgrades and changes, it's a benefit to that property. So the unit is by, unit assignment is by benefit. So if you've got one family, you've got one benefit. If it's 2 families, you've got a little bit more because there's more people using it. And that's the theory behind it.
So they're
In-
paying
It's an
more.
apartment building of six units, 6 apartments.
Yes.
It's 6 units.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure exactly in your village code, because you have an assigned units right now, that's based on some pretty basic definitions. One of the recommendations here is assigned units for facility charges should be based on the property type. Some of them right now are based upon assessed value. And again, it's a method of trying to get to how much benefit do you actually have. Right now in the village code, it says you take the average assessed value from a family home, here's your commercial or some other properties, what's that assessed value? Do the division, so the commercial is, assessed value is 4 times the average of a single family home, so they get 4 units. That's not really related to the benefit of sewer. So basing it on property type would be, it's a single family home, it's a 210 in terms of the realtor's codes. 1 family, 1 benefit unit. Apartments, how many? 411s. And you would build a table, basically, how many units per use of this property. And that makes things a little bit clearer and a little bit fairer. And again, it's a bunch of data work. It needs to be set up as a structure.
Is there some point where if you have a residential property and it's a 2-family, and then you have a residential property and it's a 16-family, is there somewhere where it becomes now commercial and no longer residential? Is there a fee?
I would think if you are renting out or selling the apartments, they would be
Properties
residential, but if
over
you're
4
renting,
families are considered commercial properties.
what's that?
Okay, yeah, I don't know what the
Properties
different
over 4 families under New York State are considered commercial
Okay.
properties.
Can you just clarify one more thing for me? If, for example, in a residential home, anywhere in the village, a house on Decker or something like that, they're paying $15 facility fee per quarter. Are the schools paying, are businesses paying that $15 also?
Like I said, some of them are based on an assessed value that is based upon how much more their value is as a property than average of a single family
And the
home.
old one, I mean.
And I don't have that data right now.
Right.
I've just seen that in the village law, and I've been given the total number of units assigned for water and sewer. So the recommendation there is to kind of redo that assigned units so that you have a more easily used chart based on each parcel's property code. So a 210 is for a single family, 215 is a family with a 1 apartment. You probably know
Accessory
this better than
apartment.
me.
220 is a 2-family, and
411s are apartments, but then what do? If there's 100 apartments there versus 7, that's a very different benefit. So you would set up something in that chart that says each apartment gets this many units.
And what happens if it's a commercial business and somebody buys a tract of land and decides, I want to put a water park here?
Then
That's
their
massive
parcel-
consumption of water. Is there
Right.
some kind of,
Their property type will change when that happens.
because that would
The
be more
system-
consumption than a restaurant or
Right.
what have you. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
but
talking.
they're zoned out too. So like a restaurant has 1 code, restaurant-type businesses, churches have a different type of,
Right.
daycares have different types of codes. If you look into municipal coding for building and structure use, every single one is defined out. A lot more narrow than you would suspect.
Right, but they're not being used for charging
We're
for
not
water or
utilizing
sewer.
Yeah, right,
that.
So
that's
what we
the
would
problem.
do was make a chart that says residents, single-family residents, 210, they get 1 unit. And then you have to go about a way to figure out how to assign units to the different uses. How big is the restaurant? Square footage is one way to calculate for how many customers, how many kitchens. Hotels, how many units do they, how many rooms do they rent out? Do they have a conference room? Do they have a ballroom? Do they have 3 kitchens? You want to have some way to say how to equalize that.
Bed
What's
and
the benefit
breakfast.
and how much water they're using, So a water park, you'd have to come up with a calculation for that. But I've seen things like hotels, medical facilities, you can have one like this, and you can have one like this. Base it on square footage. How much of that is medical treatment? How much of that is versus office space? So an office building would get a certain number of units based on either square footage or type. And it's a thought process to go through to make that clearer and, a little bit more fairer. So right now you have some assignments for units. Some of those are not really well defined. The list isn't very long. And some of them are based on assessed value of the property, which doesn't reflect what you're doing with your water. So that's one of the recommendations there. And the other one was to think about having a separate capital improvement fund for your water and your sewer, and just try to get ahead of those costs. So you could start with any money you've got in funds now, and then budget for a little bit, add a little bit to that facility charge to raise that fund. So when you have to go replace that well, or you have to go replace this, collection system area for your sewer treatment plant, you've got a fund. You don't have to borrow debt. And that's part of the planning to get ahead of those costs.
What
Same
about
as
like
your
if a
kid for
developer comes in and he wants to develop a tract of land and put all these homes?
Mhm.
Well, shouldn't he be held, well, if you wanna put them homes, we can't support it with water, you're gonna have to upgrade the treatment plant and not at the cost to us, because he's profiting and I'm paying the bill for it.
And that's along the lines of both environmental review and building codes and things like that. You have to have the capacity. You can't hook into it if there's no capacity.
Well-
Number of places they have to develop their own.
Some people just do what they want.
There is a process for developments there, and you want to make sure you're paying attention. But that is a good question, because it does happen, and that gets factored in, because you've got another number of customers that are using water and sewer. Do you have the capacity? But now you've also got more customers to help you pay that debt down, which means your cost goes down.
True, but if a developer's profiting off of it and it's costing me money and he's walking away with the bank
Yeah,
and
but
I'm
that,
paying more, even though there's more people added, but I had to upgrade everything so he could build
It
those
depends
homes.
on who owns it. Once he develops it, he walks away, he sells it.
Correct,
And
so in
those
order for him
people
to
have
develop it, shouldn't
come
he
in.
have to pay to upgrade what we need to accommodate it, rather than it falling on the rest of
yeah,
the
but that's part of the
townspeople?
CEQA process.
Yeah,
That's
and
all part of
whatever
the
you're
There's a
building
process
code
in place
and
for that. We have upgraded, like I said, upgraded and expanded our wastewater plant to 850,000 gallons from 750,000 gallons. So it should last the growth spurt that the village might be going into. If not, that developer will be paying.
Yeah,
for
because
upgrade
now
that
everybody
plant
tends to
once
wanna
again.
build denser housing where you wanna take 2 lots and make it 6 lots and,
What we've been talking about with the wastewater plant is making that a station to accept wastewater from companies, septic companies, where that plant now will start making us money.
and you won't have as many issues with
Without
bad septic
without
going in.
having us go over our permit numbers.
But there are methods for larger developments for having them buy into what
Yes.
everyone else has already paid.
But if someone is building a 4-family house, there will be 4 meters, 4 water meters. Okay, there are places in the village that, I believe it's a 10-family that has 1 meter.
see, but that's a problem.
Well, we named the park after them, it's okay. All right. So,
There are, those are things to think about, but
No, we
some
all
of
have
the-
to pay, I don't mind, but I want a level playing field, you
we don't
know?
want to pay any more than you.
Exactly, I
All right.
mean, everybody
That's-
pays
that's
their
the
fair
benefit.
share, that's what
We all
I'm
live in the
about.
village. We all share each other's, I don't want to say pain, because I think, what's that?
No,
How about cookies?
cookies, that's
Okay, so we're working for you, for all of us.
And the idea behind these recommendations and methods is to make it clearer and fairer and easier to administrate.
Right, so we have our work to do. just gave us a lot of,
Thank you, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation.
yes, and thank you for the presentation and opening up our eyes to what we need to do as we move forward. So,
We can look at that for you in terms of a chart for unit assignments. We just need more data on currently what's there now and how are those,
we could get the data from the town.
yeah,
The town has data as far as.
what properties are
what
here and,
properties.
but currently what's your billing system using for units per parcel? Because I don't have that right now. What I have is the total number of facility charge units as a group, but I don't know how they're dispersed. So that would be something that it's pretty easy for me to work up for you. Here's a schedule of unit assignment, parcel, it's a 210, it gets this, and then look at ways for some of those things that you have here that might be unusual. Schools often go by either number of students or square footage. But if you have a different type of industry, you've got a winery, you've got, different things that might need a method for assigning. Does square footage work for them, or do we need to look at?
Yeah, but the
what-
schools don't really matter, because we're paying that whole bill
We
too, with
have
the
a
school
fragrance
tax, so
factory here.
whatever their
Really?
cost
But the
is.
school, the 3 schools that we have is shared amongst the school district.
Right, but still,
No.
who's paying the school district?
I
All of
don't
us
think we
in
will
the
see
tax
our
bill,
school taxes
so
go up because of water. They're gonna go up, well,
they go up every year,
you'll
don't
never know what it went up for, but,
Can you,
So-
can you go to page 3?
yes. So when you go to businesses, like a liquor store shouldn't be paying the same amount per.
As a restaurant.
As a restaurant.
No, and even if the square footage is the same, a liquor store,
Way different.
there's no real water use, and maybe they have a toilet for staff, whereas a restaurant, you're cooking in the kitchen, you've got grease, you've got, all these other customers come in, they stay a while, so often that's like by square footage, and that accounts for how many customers there in your kitchen use, and that can compare this restaurant to this restaurant over here.
So could they make classifications though, like for different types, like
Yes.
restaurants?
Mhm.
And then have subcategories for restaurants depending on the size
Right.
and volume of
And the RPS
business?
codes that she brought up, what is that, real property system? or
Yeah,
something
so
like
the assessors use it
Yeah,
more than we
they-
used to, but the assessors mostly use it
that? Yeah,
nowadays.
things like commercial areas where you have like one of those, one of the big Walmarts where it's what do they call them, retail. And
Right.
they're considered a large retail because they likely have a kitchen, they're preparing
pet sites.
food and meats and whatever they have for their,
Not
butcher
to mention
area.
they have
There might be.
5,000 customers a day
Yeah.
using the bathroom.
And a beauty parlor, and that's a large retail. That would be assigned a different number of facility charge units than a small retail that might have clothes.
Well, and you probably have to break it out. For example, we have strip malls here.
Mhm.
So you'd have to have a owner's meter for the people who own the property for watering and stuff like that.
Common water.
And then separate units for what each category is within that strip mall.
And that's ideal, doesn't always happen that way, and what you have is those codes that are like a strip mall is a certain unit number in RPS, it's a 400, I'm forgetting which one it is,
It's like
but it
45
basically
or something.
indicates that there's smaller
Right, well,
subsets.
and that would be for them, they'd have to set up the subunits in
Right,
there.
and that's where we can work with you on that chart, that'll just be the directions for who's ever, when something gets developed, you get your assignment, this is how much you're
And
paying
then
for facility.
What's the recourse for someone with deep pockets then to fight the changes? And then cost us more money in
On fighting it,
litigation?
We've actually had success in a lot of areas. Thompson, we just did some work on sewer district consolidation. They had like 3 different sewer districts, all going into one wastewater treatment plant, and they all had different systems and charges. It's the same budget. So we helped them consolidate, and we went over some of this. One of the things that we did was remove the assessed value for the charge on debt. Assessed value does not reflect the benefit you get from use of water or sewer. And a number of those larger places were really just, happy about it because they were either a medium or a small retail in a place where their value was considered to be very high, and they were paying a lot more for debt service, and it lowered their costs. We had some other very large hospital centers that had not been paying what they should have been paying based on their size and use of water and sewer. So basically, the thought is, if this isn't paying for it, everybody else is. So the idea is to set up a system, a schedule of units assignments, so that it makes sense for you.
Our code calls for certain businesses to be allowed to run in homes. How is that?
There's a separate RPS code for that as well. So you could use that RPS code to say that. And oftentimes, those types of businesses are an office or something small where you're really not using that
We
much
have,
more
no, we have
work. Anyway.
several home catering businesses within the
Okay.
village. As well
Daycares.
as, I don't know how many of them are legal catering, but there are catering businesses that are home-based, as well as
Okay,
home-based daycares.
Yeah.
Which is, there is a code for daycares.
yes, there is.
Kennels,
Yeah, kennels
Yeah.
have a different RPS code as well. So these are things where if I get your data, I can help see what you need covered and work with you on setting up something that works for you.
Actually, can you go to the first page 3?
Yeah, did you ever ask your question?
No, I didn't.
We're still waiting to get page 3.
How different would the 21 rate be under whatever would it be the same?
Okay, that's on that,
That's on the
on that
chart.
last page, on that blue and gray chart. So looking at what you've got now
Okay.
for your, and again, your operation and maintenance budget is different
Mhm.
than it was last year in 2021, and that's gonna
Okay.
change every year. So basically, your rate might change every year or two, depending on what's happening with your budget and your debt service. But you'd be looking at water use of $3.77 per 1,000 gallons, and sewer would be $5.58.
So-
Looking at facility charges, though, your sewer facility charge would be currently less than
Right.
what's being paid now on an annual basis.
Well, the way I figured it out, it would be about $2.46 between the water and the sewer. More
For,
than it is now.
per 1,000 gallons.
No,
for facility charge.
for a minimum of 7,000 gallons.
Oh.
Unless I did something wrong.
So this is based on how much water was billed, your operation and maintenance budget, and how much water was billed. And the number of gallons billed there is million gallons, so you have to convert to thousands.
Mhm.
So you want to use the billed number. And then you also want to fix any leaks you've got so that the build comes closer to that. But that also doesn't account for watering lawns and stuff in places too. The other thought is tax exempt situations. This is a service, and a tax exempt property should be paying for the service. Right, that's a confusion that happens pretty frequently.
And they do. I have a question.